John, do you have a way to lock your chair so it won't roll while I push on you?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. If the athlete doesn't have brakes, you can use something to block the tires, or have another person hold the tires. It's not a good idea to use your foot just in case they move and roll over your foot. So, ow. So that's not such a good plan, but something that keeps the athlete from moving forward. John, I'm going to start with your right arm and test it, and I want you to hold on anywhere you need to with your left arm so that you don't fall over.
All right.
Okay, because I don't want you to fall out of the chair.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to ask you to bring your arm, this arm, out to the side, and move it up as far as you can. Great, and then bring it back down. Good. Now bring it back up again and hold it right down, just right there, okay? And don't let me move you. Hold right there, hold, 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 and relax. In standard muscle testing, you might do this 2 or 3 times. When we classify, we only do it once because we have a series of muscles to go through. If you're not certain after you've done 1 repetition, then do another one. So I'm going to ask you to do that one more time, John. Great. And it's very important for you to stabilize the athlete so they don't fall over. Hold that, hold, 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 and relax. So for John, that's a normal muscle grade, or a 5 out of 5. I'm going to have you bring your arm up in front like you're, there you go, right there, and let it back down, and bring it back up again, bring it in just a little bit, and hold right there. Well, that's a test for the deltoid muscle, middle and anterior deltoid, and John's a 5 there. The next muscle I'm going to check is the pectoralis muscle. We isolate between the clavicular and the sternal part of the pectoralis muscle, and that's an important decision for us when we're looking at our 0.5 and our 1 athlete. Our 0.5 athlete will have the upper part of the pecs, but not the lower. So this is an important test for us, and it's nice if your athlete can take their shirt off where you can see all the muscles. If that's not a possibility, you can also ask if you can reach in and feel the muscles so you can feel which muscles are popping up. John's is in a class 2, so he's going to have full innervation in these muscles. So the upper part of the pecs, John he'll have to bring his arm all the way across his body, and I look for the elbow to pass the middle of his chest. So John, if you'll bring across, all the way across, great, and relax. Okay, now do that one more time. I'm going to hold on to his shoulders so he can't substitute with the upper trapezius muscle all the way across. Good. Don't let me pull it out. Hold, 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 and relax. That's a normal muscle grade there. Now I'm going to look for the lower part of the pectoralis, or the sternal pectoralis muscles. This test, John, you're going to come all the way down like you're putting your thumb on your knee. Okay, all the way from up here down to there. And can I reach around and feel your muscles?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to have my hand close to your neck.
Okay.
Now I'm feeling for the muscle to contract. Bring your arm down. Great. Now don't let me lift it up. Hold and relax. John has a full contraction of that muscle. That's a 5 out of 5. If you're evaluating an athlete in a 0.5 or a 1 class, they will not be able to keep the arm on the knee. It'll come up to about this position, and then they'll hold solid because they're now able to use the upper part of the chest muscle. So the key here is that they can keep the muscle, keep the hand on the knee, and you're not able to lift it at all. In international classification, we will do an alternative test position where we will lay the athlete down on their back in the wheelchair and do this against gravity while they're laying down. It's not necessary if you're giving a provisional class because it's a difficult position to get someone in alone. The next muscle we'll look at are the rotation muscles, or the rotator muscles around the shoulder. And it's important to hold the athlete's arm nice and stable so they don't drop the arm. And then, John, I'm going to ask you to bring your hand up like you're going to touch my face. Good. That's great. And now all the way down. My arm is stabilizing his arm. Come up again. Now hold there and don't let me push your arm down. Okay, hold. Hold and relax. Now drop down there, come up just a little bit. Don't let me lift your arm. Hold, 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 and that is a 5 out of 5 in external and internal rotation. If John had pain with that test position, I can do the same muscle tests with the arm forward a little bit more to take strain off the shoulder. If that is still not a comfortable position for him, I can sit by him and have the arm away from the side and do the test positions in this spot. So he could push his hand out, your hand out towards me, all the way out to my hand. Hold there, hold there, hold there, hold there. Good. Now bring your hand in towards your tummy and don't let me pull it away. Okay. So that's an alternative position if the other positions are uncomfortable. Okay. The next muscle test that we look at is the serratus anterior, an important muscle for stabilizing the scapula, giving the athlete a strong shoulder for pushing. And an athlete who's a 0.5, 1 or 1.5, we often find weakness in this muscle, and we will see that on the court with the way they push. In testing the serratus anterior, I'm looking for any winging of the scapula. So as the athlete gets in the position to do the test with the arm and the elbow out, I'm watching for movement of the scapula. If I see movement of the scapula with winging, I know the athlete's muscle grades are below a 3 and I don't need to apply resistance. But if there's no movement, then I'll apply resistance down and back, and I'll say, John, please hold that. Don't let me move. Don't let me move you, and relax. And I'm palpating for any movement or winging of the scapula. John has none, so this would be a 5 out of 5. Bicep muscle, and this movement, I want you to make a nice big muscle in your arm. That's great. And relax it there. Go ahead. Pull up again. Now let it out. Come out just a little bit and hold it there. Don't let me pull it out. Don't let me pull it out. Don't let me pull it out. Great. And that's a 5 out of 5 for biceps. Arm all the way above the head. For triceps, we do a little bit different test, and in the classification manual, the description for grading is given. Now I want you to bend the arm as far as you can and then straighten it all the way out, full out with the elbows. As far out as it goes, great. And do that 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, keep your arm up, don't let it come out. Yep, all the way up like this. Okay, good. Keep going. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Now bend it just a little bit and don't let me push it down. Hold, 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 and relax. John has a nice strong triceps grade of 5. He's got nice strong shoulders without any weakness in the shoulders. So right now we're looking at an athlete who's like C7 spinal cord injury, which would be like our class 2 athlete. But we're not done yet. We've still got some other muscles to look at. But without weakness in the proximal area, he's unlikely to be in a 0.5 or a 1 class unless he has one of the other conditions other than spinal cord injury. So I'm going to look at his wrist now. We're going to move down to the wrist, and I'm going to look at wrist extension, and I want to support your arm, and I want you to bring your hand up as far as it'll go and relax all the way up. It's important to check that that's the athlete's full passive range of motion, which it is, and I want you to hold it there and don't let me move it, and relax. Okay, down again and pull up and hold there, hold, 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 there we go, and relax. Also, a little different grade there. He's a little bit lower than a 5, but probably about a 4+, so that's a nice solid grade there. We're going to look at wrist flexion now. This is one thing you can also look at and see the calluses on the hand and know that this athlete uses his hand and wrist and doesn't use any fingers to push. So I'm not expecting to see much activity in the fingers when we get to that part of the muscle test. So I'm going to have you bring your hand up as far as you can. In wrist flexion, I want to make sure that's the full passive range, which it is. Now I want you to hold it there and don't let me pull it out. Don't let me pull it out. Great. So John has a nice strong wrist on both sides. It's what we call a balanced wrist. This is one of the characteristics of the 2 class, where they have the balanced wrist, strong triceps, and strong shoulders. So John is at least a 2 class right now, and what we start to look at this point is if there is any active finger and thumb movement, because that would help us make a decision in the higher classes. So John, are you able to open your fingers? We look at finger extension.
I have some.
Yeah, he's got some there, and it's very hard. These athletes will use their wrists to help them a lot, so I'm going to take his wrist flexors out and now open. Okay, and he's able to extend his wrists against gravity, but he's not getting full range there. So I'm going to put him in a position where gravity is minimal, and I'm going to ask you to do it again. John still is not getting full range with his fingers in a position without a gravity, so we're looking at grades of about a 2- in the hand for extension. Okay, are you able to close your hand at all? Okay. John can close his fingers a little bit there. So you want to make sure, is it the fingers that are doing the movement, or is he using the wrist to then stretch the muscles and have a passive movement? So I'm going to hold his wrist, and now John, I want you to try to close your fingers. So there's just a tiny, tiny, tiny flicker of movement in these 2 fingers of what we would give as a 1. Anything in your thumb? Okay. I can look at John's hand and see that the thumb is flat. He doesn't have good arches in his hand, so I know he's not going to have much active movement there. And can you bring your thumb across your hand? Okay. So we've got a little bit of thumb flexion. He's using his wrist to help him. That's the movement I want, all the way across. Are you able to do that? Okay. That's a partial flexion without gravity. This would be a 2- grade. Anything else in the thumb?
That's
Okay.
kind of it. I can't hitchhike.
Okay. Can you squeeze my finger? Okay. So all the movement in John's thumb, we look for flexion. We look for abduction away from the hand. We look for adduction towards the hand. We look for extension, and we look for opposition. John has 1 of those in very, very minimal amount. So the last part of the hand that we would look at is being able to open and close the fingers using interossei. So we're looking for this movement. John is able to extend his fingers and get a little separation, but there's no muscle activity in the interossei, so he gets a 0 there. At this point for John, he's got a solid shoulder, triceps, biceps, nice strength that's balanced on the wrist flexion and extension, and very, very limited amounts of finger movement, and he would fit into the 2 class. We would test the other arm. For an inexperienced classifier, you may find that it's easier to do a muscle on one side and then on to the other side, just like you would do in the clinic, and that's permitted. More experienced classifier may choose to go through one side and then the other, just so they don't have to walk around the athlete so much if we're seeing 100 athletes at one tournament. The other part of classification that we would do here is to check to see if the athlete has any muscle function in their stomach or in their back. And there are 2 tests that we use there, where the athlete has to lean forward on their chair with a ball or their hands out in front, and they have to be able to come up like this. Are you able to do that, John?
Sure.
Okay. Can you put your arms out in front?
Let me move my feet forward.
Yep,
here.
do whatever you need to, and I can sit wherever you need me to support you. Okay. Arms out in front. Okay, we're seeing the athlete struggle just to get into position, and I feel no muscle activity here. Are you able to sit up with your hands out like that? Okay. So at that part, John demonstrates 0 function there. Also, John, if you can turn that way and give me a nice strong cough. Good, good. So I'm checking for any abdominal muscle activity, which John does not have. Also, John, are you able to turn side to side with your hands out like this? and John has to lean on the back of the chair to do that. He's doing that all with his arms. So he has nothing in the trunk that's useful for him. So when we classify, we get a score for each arm. We would add those up. In this athlete's case, he's 2 and 2. Added together is 4. Divided by 2 gives us a 2. And we add in anything from the trunk, which for this athlete is 0. So at this point he starts play. He starts his functional testing and his observation and play as a class 2. The classification at an international tournament is done by a panel of 3 classifiers. The athlete is required to come to the classification in their actual playing chair. So this athlete is in his rugby chair. He's using a strap around his belly, and he's also got some strapping around his foot. And you play with some gloves usually?
No, I don't play with gloves. But
some athletes would play with gloves, and we would ask them to bring them to the classification evaluation to look at them, but not to put them on, so we can evaluate their hands without them having to take everything off. So this athlete has come to classification in his rugby chair, which does not have brakes. So one of the classifiers is involved in helping to stabilize the chair. One classifier is doing the actual physical testing, and another classifier is doing the writing of the results. So for this athlete, we've gone through and done evaluations on the shoulder and the upper arm, and all of those grades are 5 out of 5. So now we're going to look at the wrist and hand. So let's start with wrist extension, and I'm going to ask you to bring your hand up, and I want to check and make sure that's all of his full passive range of motion, which it is. I'm going to let you put your hand right on me, and now pull up all the way up and hold it right there, and hold and hold and hold. That's a wrist extension, 5 out of 5, nice and strong. Now we'll look at the other side. Now when I look at this athlete's hand, I look at the area around the thumb and the area around the little finger, which is the muscle bellies for most of the muscles that control the fingers and the thumbs. And this athlete has a nice muscle development in his thumb and around his little finger, and he's got nice arches in his hands, and he's got nice muscle development in between the fingers here. So I'm knowing at this point this athlete's going to have some finger function, and I'm going to have to test to see what that is. So let's look at the wrist, pulling the wrist up. That's as far as he's able to get that. So I'm going to ask you to hold it there, and don't let me pull out. Hold, 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 and relax. Nice and strong. So now this athlete has strong shoulder, strong upper arm, strong wrist on both sides. So we know this athlete is at least in a class 2, and now we have to start looking at fingers. So I'm going to have you open your hand up as far as you possibly can. I'm going to hold his wrist, so if he's trying to use the wrist to help him, I'm going to try to take that out. And an athlete who's strong like this, I might actually have to hold with both hands and have another classifier come up and do the testing. Okay? So I'm going to have you hold there and hold the fingers up. This athlete has strong extension. I cannot break that, and he's able to stabilize his wrist himself, so he's not substituting with his wrist. So he's 5 in finger extensors. Now I'm going to have you turn over, and I just want you to close and open, and close and open very fast. Okay. This is a nice grasp and release. We don't see any substitution movement, so I'm expecting some good strength here. And I'm just going to have you close on my fingers. Yeah, now give me a squeeze. And he could hurt me, so go ahead and squeeze. And I could pick him up. So he's 5 out of 5, so I know he's got some nice strength in his fingers. And now I'm going to look at his thumb. As a classifier, I'm getting a little concerned that this athlete has got such good strength in his fingers that this may be an arm that's not like a tetraplegic arm. So I'm starting to think in my head if this athlete may be eligible. Okay, so with the thumb, I'm going to ask you to bring your hand over like a 4, and I want you to hold that there, hold, and relax. I don't even have to hold his wrist. He's able to do that. That's thumb flexion. That's a nice solid 5. Now I'm going to have you put your thumb right on top of your hand. This is a movement that's weird. And then bring it up away from the palm of your hand. Perfect. Can you hold it up there? This is thumb abduction. I'm looking at the muscle belly as he does that, or feeling it if I need to. That's a nice 5 out of 5. I could probably use my whole hand, but we won't do that. Okay, now lay your hand down, and I want you to lift your thumb up. Yeah, clear. There we go. We're looking for thumb extension here. I want you to hold that, hold that, hold that. That's also a 5. So we've got 5s in thumb all the way around so far. Now I'm going to have you squeeze your thumb down against my finger. We're looking at thumb adduction. Hold that, hold that, hold that. A 5 as well. And now I'm going to do opposition. So up, all the way around to your little finger. Yeah, I don't care what you do with the little finger, but mostly with the thumb. Yeah, come away again, all the way out. Now come across. There you go. Nice rotation there. Hold that, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it. And that's a 5 out of 5. So when you test the thumb opposition, you want to be careful where your hand placement is, that you're actually testing the opposition or the rotation movement, and that you're not up here testing the flexion of the thumb. So be careful about your hand placement there. Now this athlete at this point has 5 out of 5 muscle grades all the way through his arm. Now I would go and test the other arm, and if I get the same grades on the other arm, this athlete would not be eligible to play wheelchair rugby. He would have 5 out of 5 strength throughout all the muscles in the arm. If the other arm was the same, he would not be eligible. Okay. This athlete has a spinal cord injury with brachial plexus involvement on the other arm that affects his strength in the other arm and allows him to be eligible to play. The importance of having an athlete present for classification in their playing chair with their playing equipment allows the classifiers to get an idea of what's the athlete's actual function and what part of the athlete's performance is based on assistance they get from equipment. So this athlete has no trunk function, but the way his wheelchair is set up and the strapping system that he has allows him to be very stable in the trunk and use his arms to their maximum capacity. In wheelchair rugby, we like to know how equipment helps an athlete, so we don't penalize the athlete in their classification by having good equipment and having a good setup. So it's helpful for the classifiers to see the athlete perform these tests with their equipment as well as the equipment removed.